So there was two incidences that happened during the game of the dice, which I didn't really cover last week. There's when the game of dice was taking place, Vidur constantly objected to the game being played in the first place. He objected to when they staked the five brothers. He objected when they staked Draupadi. He definitely objected. At one point, so Dhritarashtra actually understood the science of omens very well. And today the science is not there, but basically like a particular bird crowing or a particular animal appearing indicates either good or bad, right? Like, so today I think the omens that people still follow is like a butterfly. When somebody passes away, that's still considered an omen. Ants are still considered an omen that money is coming. But it's a lost science. And also we don't live in very natural settings anymore. So as if we're going to hear a jackal howling, where will jackals be, right? Or particular birds also, because of the way the cities are built now, we don't have. And also we're not living in our native places, as like people have gone everywhere. So different creatures exist everywhere. And so we don't really understand the science. But at that point in time, Dhritarashtra did understand the science of omens. And they were very, very bad omens being constantly shown during the game of dice. Highly inauspicious omens. And so I don't think I mentioned this, but when Duryodhana was born, there was horrible omens. All very, very inauspicious omens. And at that point, when Duryodhana was born, Vidur told Dhritarashtra, kill him now only. But I don't think any parent can kill their child. It's just not something a parent can do. And so it's a bit of a harsh thing for Vidur to say. Maybe I'm too soft-hearted. Maybe in Treta Yuga, people were that detached and they did, but it's a bit harsh. It's like, be detached and don't give in to his whims and fancies. That I totally agree with. And now, in the game of dice as well, when Vidur hears all these omens, Vidur pretty much looks at Dhritarashtra and says, you recognize all these omens. Stop immediately. Stop the game immediately. He says this out aloud. It's not like he's talking in code and the whole congregation can hear him. And then he says to the Dhritarashtra, if you were wise, even right now, you will order Arjuna to shoot the Duryodhana. And because what he's doing is wrong, is adharma, and he's continuously doing it. And then he cites all the things that Duryodhana has done. And it's quite a long list. Yeah. And so, okay, as a kid, you can't kill. He's just born. How do you know? He may turn out okay. He may not turn out okay. You really don't know. But here you are, some 60 years later, apparently they were quite old at that point in time. They lived longer than we live right now also. So, but middle age. And now you've seen, right? He's poisoned people. He's stolen from people. He's tried to murder them. He's tried to, the list is quite long. So now if you say, no, he should not be king. And the punishment for Kshatriyas in those days was you fight to your death. So that's basically what Vidur is saying. So it's not like execute him, kill him. It was the tradition then that when two princes fight, they fight till their death. And so Vidur literally gets up and says this in front of everyone, and Duryodhana is right there. It's not like Duryodhana can't hear what he's saying. And it's Karna that gets up and defends Duryodhana. So, I would say passionately, but it was aggressively. because to defend Duryodhana, he is so incredibly insulting to Vidur and to basically the elders, to the Pandavas. And so here you see that this is one of Karuna's positives and negatives. So to be so loyal to a friend is positive, right? To have that sense of protection and that sense of wanting to defend, wanting to honor your friend is a beautiful quality. But the way in which we do it is so important, because sometimes in trying to help, you harm by the way you say things. And nobody actually really pays attention to Karna because you can tell straight away it's emotional talking. Like, you don't win people over. You don't win over their respect and their regard when you're coming across as defensive and emotional, basically, right? And that's what we see with but it's interesting that this happens. It's interesting that in the middle of the dice, Vidur goes to that extent to try and stop the game. His advice to Dhritarashtra is to that extent, that not only stop the game, stop Duryodhana from being king, take away all his power. Like, stop the momentum of how things are going. Again and again, he tells Duryodhana, you are hurting yourself. You are bringing harm to the whole lineage. Stop it. It falls on deaf ears. There's another thing that happens. I think I briefly mentioned it last week. So from the 100 sons, there's one that's called Vikarna, and he gets up and he defends Draupadi. I mentioned this last week already. I did, right? And he argues that she is not lost and she is not a slave. And he stands up and he protects Draupadi. And he even says that the game is unrighteous to start with. So how can she be lost? Because the game was unrighteous to start with. Again, it's Karna that gets up and insults Vikarna, saying, when the Pandavas have said they are lost, why are you, as Dhritarashtra's son, taking their side? This is not a very valid argument. This is like you have to belong to a side, whereas Vikarna was talking about dharma and what's right and what's wrong. And here his argument is like, no, you should just be on the Kaurava side because you were born to Dhritarashtra. But he is an exceptional character in the Mahabharata. He's the only one of the 100 sons that fought on the Pandava side. There's this very cool thing that happens before the war was fought, which would happen when wars were fought during that era, that before the war is fought, an announcement is made that if you want to swap sides, you can do so now. It's a little bit like when weddings happen and they say, speak now or forever hold your peace. Of course, in the movie, that's when somebody gets up and speaks. So before the war happens too, it's kind of like, decide now whether you want to be on this side or on the other side. And he actually changes sides. He goes over to the Pandava side. I think there was one other person that did that too, but now I can't remember who it was. Anyway, the war is still a while away. So Draupadi is brought. And the commanding that she be disrobed, and she invokes Krishna, and Krishna becomes cloth. And she becomes this pile of cloth. And so in this moment, whoever was there, it's the first-hand experiencing of a miracle. Like you're watching that this clock doesn't end. So that you couldn't help but have an emotional reaction to this. How could you not, right? Like you're witnessing something that's beyond logic, it's beyond explanation, it's beyond normal. It would blow your mind. So many people were in this reverential state of awe and wonder and felt this incredible sense of, I have just witnessed something so special. These are all the people in the assembly. But Dhritarashtra, Gandharvi, their hearts sink. Why? Because how can this be possible? This is definitely the hand of God. Like there's no human that could do this. There's no logical explanation for why Draupadi's cloth doesn't end. And if God is protecting Draupadi, and it's us who are insulting Draupadi, there was incredible fear. Incredible fear. And so Dhritarashtra's mind starts thinking again. And, some people just go straight to, when people are narrating the Mahabharata, some people will go straight from Draupadi's being saved by Krishna to Dhritarashtra saying, we are so sorry. It was meant to be a friendly game. We didn't mean for anything of this to happen. But in the actual Mahabharata, Duryodhana, Karna, and Dushashan still try to continue to insult Draupadi. So they've just watched that her cloth hasn't ended. I'm not sure what they're thinking. Like, are they scared and they really want to make sure that they save whatever they can save? Or have they not noticed? I'm really not sure what's going on in their minds. But what they're doing is trying to ensure that they don't lose what they won through the game of dice. And so they kept saying, Draupadi's a slave, take her into the slave chamber. Draupadi's a slave, we can tell her what to do. Tell her to go and clean Duryodhana's room. Literally exact words. And Draupadi doesn't move. And Dushashan's about to pull her hair again and take her in to the maid chamber. And she says, before you do that, you dragged me here and I wasn't able to do what protocol requires, which is bow down to the elders. So let me do that now. And when she bowed down to them, she once again says, her speech is quite heartfelt. And so here when we see, it's interesting that when we speak, like when Karna spoke, Karna speaks with this incredible anger. And so it's still emotion speaking, but we almost like don't want to hear it because it's anger. Draupadi is also emotionally speaking, but it's this seeking of justice because I have been wronged. And so it wins people over. Like emotional speaking has to be so tricky how you do emotional speaking. And so what does she say? To the effect of, the only other time I was in a public setting, an assembly like this, was during my Swayamvar. After that, I have been kept in palaces so that no person can see me. Never mind men, no person can see me. I've been kept in the palace where the sun's scorching heat cannot burn me, wind cannot dry my skin. So she talks about how well she's been cherished, right? Like My husbands have treated me so that, and like to the point where the ground had to be softened for her to walk. Like to that much is how they say that about Sita ji as well. Like that's how much they were cherished and loved and pampered, maybe would be the word. Uh-huh. And I went from that to this. In my father-in-law's presence. So this is a definite dig at Dhritarashtra. My father-in-law has allowed this to happen. Somebody who has come from this kind of wealth and status and protection, you've brought me to a level of slave, and she's wearing one cloth. And here she talks a lot about, in actual Mahabharata, they talk a lot about her being on her season. So these are the words used. When a woman goes through her menstrual cycle, different people use different words in different cultures. I know you're in the yoga world, they call it the lunar. Are you on your moon cycle, right? They'll ask that. General, everyday, I think people just use the word period. But of course, lots of words are used for it. And the term used in Treta Yuga was, I'm on my season. So she says this repeatedly, like, so there seems to be definite norms about it. And one of the norms was, if you don't want to be touched, you don't get touched. As a woman, I totally understand this, right? You're already uncomfortable. Don't touch me. Leave me alone. And Dushashan has dragged her by her hair. And her cloth that she is wearing is stained from period blood. And so then, whether it's menstrual blood, or if you drop food on your clothes, or you don't want to be seen with stained clothes, right? It doesn't actually matter what it is. You want to be presentable when you're in public. And so when she's narrating that she's in an assembly full of men, being treated as a slave, wearing a stained cloth, like how low have I fallen? Is this my destiny? Is this the life that I have come to live? And she's saying all of this after everyone has watched Krishna save her. So obviously, she's worthy of being treated the way she was treated, and not the way she's currently being treated. And it's almost like you saw for yourself. And so all the people witnessing this totally are cheering Draupadi, but nobody talks. Out of fear of the Duryodhana, the Drashtra, they don't talk. And then Vikarna, this is the point where Vikarna gets up and says, Draupadi is not lost. And the whole crowd cheers. Then Vidur also gets up and says, Draupadi is not lost. The whole crowd cheers. Every time the crowd cheers, Duryodhana's blood boils. And it's almost like he wants to hold on to it stronger. And this is an interesting thing. When you try to take away something from someone, they will hold on to it stronger. One of the reactions, right? One of the natural reactions of, and we'll see this in kids also. You try to take the toy away from them, they hold it stronger. And so that's why, as a teacher, as a parent, you said, don't take it out from their hand. Like either put your hand and offer that they give it to you, or give them something else so you can distract them and get the toy. With an adult, it's pretty much the same. Whereas, it's nobody's, I guess this was being taken away from the Duryodhana, but the thing is, it wasn't his to start with. And this is an interesting thing about us. It's not mine, but I want it to be mine. And so I still hold on to it so tight. But it's not mine. Right? I'm not talking about Duryodhana. Here I'm talking about people and wealth or people with other people. We can be so possessive of other people. So, but people cannot be mine. And sometimes when people come to speak to me and they're narrating the incident, they'll even say, like this person's my person or this person's that person. I'm like, how is the person belongs to another person? But we have that, sometimes we have that feeling in our head, or even like I said, with wealth, we have that, or status. It's mine, right? Whether it be a political position or whether it be a company head management position and so we have incredible sense of, and so we hold on to it really, really tight. And we see this with Duryodhana. Duryodhana is trying to hold on to this really tight. And the voice of reason is telling him, don't, but he still does. And so, okay, like I said, Karna keeps arguing that Draupadi is a slave. So this happens several times over. It's a lot, the scene goes on for really long. I think even in the India depiction of the Mahabharata, the scene goes on for quite a few episodes because the dialogues are quite extensive. But finally, Duryodhana says, I will only accept it if Yudhishthira says so. And actually, Draupadi has already said this. If you remember last week, Draupadi has already said that she will only accept she's a slave if Yudhishthira says so. Now, Duryodhana is saying that he will only accept Draupadi is not a slave if Yudhishthira said so. Now, Yudhishthira hasn't said a word. And no matter how many times people say Yudhishthira answer the question, he doesn't answer the question. Even at one time, Bhishma says, maybe Yudhishthira can answer this question, but Yudhishthira won't answer the question. Why? Because if he says Draupadi is not a slave, Duryodhana is going to say, then why did you play her? So actually, Yudhishthira can't answer because it's already done. And if Yudhishthira says Draupadi is a slave, that's the end of that. So there's no way he was going to answer. Also, he didn't call her here intending her to be a slave. He called her here in the hope of reinstilling dharma. And this is why we see how intelligent Yudhishthira was, although the price he had to pay for it is huge. So Duryodhana says he'll only say that if Yudhishthira answers. Yudhishthira doesn't answer. Then Duryodhana says he'll only accept that Draupadi is not a slave if Bhim, Arjuna, Nakula, and Sahadev say they don't belong to Yudhishthira. Because Vidur said, a wife is not a man's property. Draupadi is not Yudhishthira's property. He cannot lose her. So by that logic, Duryodhana says, Arjuna and Bhim have to say they don't belong to Yudhishthira. Then I will agree that Draupadi doesn't belong to. Which was actually quite smart of Duryodhana. Let's give him a little bit of credit. Because Duryodhana knew there's no way the brothers would say that. So Bhim talks. Bhim talks at several points. And I don't know if I mentioned this in last week's class. Bhim, even at one point, gets up and says, Nakula, go and bring me fire. I want to burn Yudhishthira's hands. Did I tell you all this last week? How dare he play Draupadi? Those hands that put her on stake, I want to burn them. Bhim is saying this. Yeah. He didn't say this when he was lost. He says this when Draupadi's been put on stake, even before she's lost. So you have to like Bhim's. Bhim already was very passionate that what are you doing? Yeah. At this point, Arjuna turns to Bhim and says, "You have never spoken against Yudhishthira. Now's not the time to start. The only way we are going to survive is if we stay united. If you speak against Yudhishthira now, then the Kauravas have truly won. Yudhishthira losing to them is not us losing. But if you go against Yudhishthira right now, we lose." And then to the effect of, he doesn't use these exact words, but I'm going to use them. "I don't care how hard it is, you control yourself." To the effect, that's what Arjuna is saying. He says it better. I can't remember exactly how he said it, but he says it really nicely. And Arjuna himself, no matter how much his blood boiled, and his blood was boiling as much as Bhim. Because Arjuna and Bhim have the more rajasic nature of the Kshatriya, where when something needs to be done, you do it, right? And so it's here, now, do. We saw earlier also, those cows were stolen. Arjuna did what he needs to do, face the consequences of what has to be faced, but do what you have to do. And he did it, right? That you really see this in Arjuna. Even when he had to win Subhadra over and he want to anger Balram, do what you have to do and then face what you have to face. And so that's the principle which Arjuna lived. He truly, truly lived that. And so here, when he can't do, it's so much effort for him. And then here you see this complete trust. And so when he says to Bhim that we can't let the Kauravas win by splitting us up, but also he says to Bhim, you know that Yudhishthira would never do anything that would actually harm us. And so don't lose that trust and faith in Yudhishthira. And then he says, so that was all logic and reasoning. So we see that Arjuna does have logic and reasoning. And then this is what makes the Mahabharata so incredible. There's all this logic and reasoning knowledge stuff, and then it goes into emotional thinking. And so Arjuna goes into emotional thinking and looks at Yudhishthira's face while he's talking to Bhim and says, look at Yudhishthira's face. Can you not see he'd want to burn his own hands? Can you not see already how much he is suffering? You and I know him well enough, we can read him. This is the worst moment of his life. Does he really need you to tell him how horrible this is? And that's when Bhim listens. And so this also is interesting because Bhim won't listen to reason. Bhim listens to emotions. And so some of us are like that. Some of us don't listen to reason. We listen to emotion. I remember once the mother was having a hard time with her daughter, and she was being strong. And then when she came to speak to me, I was like, but show her you in pain. And she's like, no, I don't want her to see I'm in pain. I mean, there was a death in the family, right? So it wasn't like pain is an unnormal thing. It was like, why? Everyone grieves. And she stopped and she said, actually, the only day she was nice to me was the day she saw me crying. Because everyone handles grief in a different way. And then sometimes when you're acting too strong, the kid thinks you're not grieving and they get angry with you. Like, I'm grieving so much, why aren't you grieving? And so this is all emotional thinking. Some of us need emotional thinking only to be able to shift our emotion. Sometimes reasoning doesn't shift our emotion. Ideally, reasoning should shift our emotion. I repeat, ideally, reasoning should help us to change our mindset. But sometimes when we're just way too emotional, You need an emotion only to change the mindset. It's like fight fire with fire kind of thing. Okay, so where are we? Duryodhana says, if they answer that they don't belong to Yudhishthira. So Bhim answers that I'm going to kill you all. How dare y'all do this to Draupadi? He doesn't really address um, the issue, although he does in some way. He says, do you think I would sit here doing nothing if I wasn't belonging to Yudhishthira? If I didn't think I belonged to Yudhishthira, y'all would have all been dead by now. So his way of answering the question was, of course, I belong to Yudhishthira. But also mentions threateningly that he's going to take his revenge. Arjuna answers the question. And Arjuna says, up until the point where Yudhishthira lost us, we belonged to Yudhishthira. After Yudhishthira lost himself, nothing belonged to Yudhishthira. So Arjuna stood up for Draupadi. What's so beautiful about this is not only that Arjuna stood up for Draupadi, because he makes it very clear, like that he belonged to Yudhishthira, right? So his loyalty is clear. His love for Yudhishthira is clear, and there's zero betrayal to Yudhishthira because he says he belonged to Yudhishthira. But then he says, since Yudhishthira lost himself, Draupadi didn't belong to Yudhishthira at that point in time. So again, it's still loyalty to Yudhishthira, and it's loyalty to Draupadi, and it's in adherence to Dharma. And like I said, the beautiful part is not that Arjuna stood up for Draupadi, because yes, one of the Pandavas should have stood up for Draupadi. And yes, Bhim has stood up for Draupadi, but here when we see Arjuna do it, it's really, really well intelligent and well thought out. But the most beautiful part about Arjuna's reply is Arjuna understood what Yudhishthira wanted. What did Yudhishthira want? He wanted the elders in the court to see this is adharma through reasoning, not through emotion, but through reasoning, and to stop it. At this point, Vidur finally speaks because the omens continue. The animal sounds coming in from outside are the omens that both the Drashtra and Vidur hear. Everyone can hear it actually. And so the Drashtra gets really scared and says, Duryodhana, you wicked child. His child, Duryodhana. How could you do such a thing to Draupadi? This is incredibly adharmic. He took so long to say this. They already tried to derobe her. After that, they've had so much conversation. Now he's talking. And what the Drashtra says, it makes me cringe. He says, wicked adharmic people do not have clean hearts and therefore make foolish mistakes. But wise dharmic people can forgive anything and everything. And so Yudhishthira, forgive this wicked-minded Duryodhana. Then he tasked Draupadi to forgive what has happened to them and tells Draupadi, ask for any boon. Ask me anything you want. And Draupadi asked, free Yudhishthira. Did I do this last week? No. She doesn't say free all of them. She asked only free Yudhishthira. By then, Yudhishthira's son was already born. And she says she doesn't want her son to have a father who's a slave. So free Yudhishthira. Even though her reasoning is her son, actually, Draupadi was very, very, very clear that Yudhishthira was an incredibly noble person. And she was also incredibly clear that her loyalty would be to Yudhishthira. Now we know, because we've read the entire Mahabharata and we stand as outsiders, we know that Draupadi's favorite's actually Arjuna. Yeah. Not highly, highly favorite. It wasn't like that obvious, just little, small, little things. Not like some where it's blatant, not like that at all, right? It was just she had a softer spot for Arjuna, but she was incredibly loyal and dutiful to all of her husbands, and they all adored her. But even though her heart had a soft spot for Arjuna, her loyalty was to Yudhishthira first. This is where you see head over heart. And this is another thing that makes Draupadi an incredible person. This is why she's one of the foremost role models, even for us as women, but just for anyone, male, female, doesn't matter. How many of us can put head over heart? I have a favorite. Firstly, don't have favorites. There's no need. But I have a favorite. Then what will most of us do? We'll put favorite first, right? And we see, like, you see this conversation is happening between Draupadi and Dhritarashtra, and Dhritarashtra has put heart over head again and again and again, to the point where Draupadi is being disrobed in a court full of men. To that point, he has put heart over head. Like, how can you to even allow such a thing? And here you see Draupadi, who's endured such trauma, and she's still able to put head over heart. She's still able to say, free Yudhishthira. And then the Dhritarashtra says, oh, no, that's too little for you to ask. You must ask for more than that. How can you ask for only that? Of course, Yudhishthira is free. Like I said, this was meant to be a friendly game. None of this was ever meant to happen. Ask for something else. And then she says, free my other 4 husbands. On the second boon, she asked for, free my other 4 husbands. At this point, Karna, this Karna during the game of dice, Oisha. Shakmani was the brains behind the game of dice, but Karna was the fuel that kept the fire alive. And Karna was the fuel that really burnt the hearts of people. Here Karna says, we thought the Pandavas were great. They did the Rajasuya Yagna. They won so many things. But look at them. They have to be saved by their wife. You call them men? I take offense to this statement. This is an interesting thing. Actually, Karna was a nice guy. Why would he say something like this? Karna actually respected his wife, treated her so well. And then with Draupadi, he acts so badly and in such a uh, demeaning way to women in general. Hmm. And so when we talk about dharma, and who is someone who is following dharma, one of the most important aspects of dharma is to see a sense of oneness. Hmm. Even in the Western world, when they talk about the glory of Eastern tradition, the thing that is glorified is the oneness that weaves through all of creation, right? This is this is the most powerful part of the ancient scriptures, that it helps to show us oneness in all of creation, helps us to see oneness with each other. Yeah? So dharma never divides. Dharma always brings things together. That's the very meaning of the word dharma. And so to live in adherence to dharma, our thinking isn't that which divides. But once we fall into a thinking of that which divides, a dharma happens. So even if we take male-female divide, dharma, there's no divide. Right? In that Chinese tradition of yin yang, yes, they're two different colors, but there's a dot of the black in the white, and there's the dot of the white in the black because they're not so separate. And also, it's not a straight line, the yin yang, it's curved, right? Because you're constantly mixing. Mm. And the fact that they separate is just to show that they are different. It's not that they are separate because it's in one circle. That's what's so beautiful about that symbol of yin yang. It's actually one thing in two different ways, constantly interacting with each other. That's dharma. I can recognize something to be different, but I don't divide on the basis of that. I just use it appropriately. Adharma is when we divide, separate, differentiate based on the difference, and then treat one as inferior and the other as superior. Adharma. Because not only have you divided, you have created conflict, and you have created now a clash. The minute you make one inferior, there's suffering, there's shame, there's heartache. The minute you make one superior, there's arrogance, there's conceit, there's pride. None of those are beautiful qualities. Even the suffering, heartache, inferiority, those are not, they're not nice qualities to see in ourselves, in other people. They're not beautiful qualities. Right? They're not things that help us to flourish. They not help us to see oneness. When I'm so busy feeling inferior, how am I going to feel one with you? I won't be able to. I'll be too busy feeling bad about myself. I'm not really concerned about how you're feeling about yourself because, you know, I'm too busy feeling bad about myself. I'm going to go back to Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira called Draupadi to the court to fight for Dharma, fully aware that she was incredibly capable. Yudhishthira felt no shame in being saved by a woman. Arjuna felt no shame in being saved by a woman. Why? Because there's no insult, there's no divide. Yeah. Krishna uses his wives to fight demons. Mm. Subhadra was the one that kills Narakasuma. Krishna was like, yeah, you do. Krishna handed over kingdom to Rukmani. Mm. Krishna didn't see it as insult or failure. I don't know if Karna actually did or not. But here in the court, he uses it as a way to insult. Mm. Now, if you don't really feel it and you say it and you encourage the concept of that kind of thinking, you're promoting adharma. This is Karna's biggest weakness. He promoted adharma, knowing it not to be correct, and in his heart, not even believing it. Yeah. Why promote it? You can't advocate for adharma. Well, you can. He did. Advocate for dharma, not adharma. And he had the capacity too. He knew better, and actually he felt that way, but he still advocated for adharma. This is why he suffered so much. You know, Duryodhana suffers. He couldn't help himself. It's like Karna can help himself. He has the strength. Duryodhana didn't have the strength. Karna has the strength. And so it's far more disappointing that Karna advocates for adharma because he had the strength to advocate for dharma. He had the clarity, he had the knowledge. He even had the purity of heart. And then you still choose adharma. So it's him standing up. It's Karna standing up, saying that they are not men because they are being saved by Draupadi. Duryodhana, no, the Dhritarashtra at this point says, no, what are you saying? Not only do you have your husband's back, ask for a third boon. I love this line. Which line? The one Draupadi is about to say next. It is greedy to ask for too much. We should ask only for what we need. Oh, this woman. Who is she saying this to? People who have stolen all their wealth. Like, come on, we need to cheer Draupadi here. Look at how powerful she is. Look at how wise she is. Look at how strategic she is. She's too good. It's like, she's too good. We really need to understand how brilliant Draupadi is, how skilled Draupadi is. And she hasn't insulted anyone. She hasn't insulted Duryodhana or Dhritarashtra. She says, as per what I have learned from scriptures, it is greedy to take more than what you need. All I need are my husbands. Technically, there's a rule, right? Many rules. In those days, there were very many rules. And I love that there was a rule about how many boons you can get because, wow, that means they got boons all the time. Like, why is there a rule about boons? Why can't we still be getting boons all the time? This Kalyug just doesn't seem so fun, huh? Like, they got boons all the time because there was a rule about you shouldn't ask more than 2 boons from someone. Why aren't people giving us boons? So it was a rule. So she didn't ask for the third boon because the rule is don't take too much. Because the minute you take the third boon, you get greedy. I follow this in another way. I'm allowed to eat one bite of whatever it is that's not really that good for me, or I've said I wouldn't eat so much of. And then if I really like it, I'm allowed the second bite, but not the third bite. We can adapt these rules, okay? We can't get boons, but we can adapt the rules. We can still use it to guide us. We become indulgent, right, if we have too much, greedy if we keep asking for too much. But it's also a nice thing, because like even in terms of us, when we were asking for bhikshas, you're not supposed to ask the same house more than twice in a month. After a month, you can ask them again. So we don't follow that anymore, huh? Draupadi, amazing. She frees Yudhishthira, she frees Nakula, Sahadev, Bhim, and Arjuna. And then when Dhritarashtra says, ask for more, she says, no need. All I need are my husband. So we won. She teaches about greed. 2, she teaches about what's important. Have you forgotten what's important? I don't need anything else. I just need the people that I love to be free, to be with me. I just need my own freedom. That's all. Really, the way she conducts herself, she's amazing. Also her loyalty and her faith. Even though her husbands weren't able to save her when she was being disrobed, still her faith in her husbands. Because what does she say? If I have them, I have all I need. They'll take care of the rest. They just failed her. Look at her power, that she can still love, that she can still have faith in them. This is not weakness. This is strength. Sometimes people will pray just for 1 week. They didn't even pray that long. 1 week they prayed for whatever, to pass a test, to have a kid, to get married. Then they'll come and call me after 1 week. It didn't work. So little is our resilience. Or smallest thing. Somebody says something, somebody hurts us in a slight way, somebody forgets our birthday, somebody maybe intentionally does something a little bit underhanded and we get hurt. We get hurt. All of us get hurt. Who hasn't been hurt, right? Somebody, they weren't quite as loyal as we wanted them to be. They didn't love us quite as much as we wanted them to love us. What do? Write off. No longer love this person, no longer trust this person, no longer need them in our life. Cancel culture. We live in cancel culture. Delete, we delete them. Or let them be in our life, but we don't have that same trust and faith in them. How strong is Draupadi's love? She can still call Yudhishthira my lord. She still stood there and said, there is no greater man in this room than Yudhishthira. It wasn't lip service. It wasn't politics. She actually would have gone home with just Yudhishthira. You see this again and again and again. Whenever Draupadi had to choose, she chose Yudhishthira. She knew that was the right choice to make. It was head over heart. But heart was also there. She genuinely loved Yudhishthira, genuinely admired Yudhishthira. And she lived her life the way Yudhishthira lived his life. It wasn't like she loved him and she did her own thing. No, she lived per dharma. Yeah. She knew she had his respect as much as she respected him. That was so clear in their bond. Like, it's such an incredible marriage. Like, Draupadi had 5 husbands, and she was able to have such an incredible relationship with each one of them. Dhritarashtra says, no, 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 no. Of course, you can have your whole kingdom back and all your wealth back, like this game never happened. Can you imagine what Duryodhana felt at that point? Dhritarashtra meant it. He gave back the kingdom, he gave back the wealth, he set them all free. Everything that was done in the game of dice got undone. Dhritarashtra said, let them have it all back. And he gave this dialogue of Yudhishthira, please forgive them. This was meant to be a friendly game. Please don't take any of it to heart. 1, can we really imagine somebody won't take it to heart after all this happened? Like, who won't take it to heart? I'll tell you who won't take it to heart. Bhim. Those 100 Kauravas were dead in that moment itself. The moment Draupadi was dragged into that court, in Bhim's eyes, they were dead. And he did. He successfully killed every last one of them. During the war, it's like he has like, not really, but as though he had 100 matchsticks and he was like 13 done today, 40 done today, 4 done today. Literally, he counted them down. Literally, during the war, he counted down the 100 Kauravas. Arjuna. This is what makes Arjuna different to Yudhishthira. Who could actually forgive the Kauravas at this point in time? There was only one person in that room who could actually forgive the Kauravas. Yudhishthira. The only person in that room who could forgive them was Yudhishthira. Arjuna wasn't going to forgive them. Arjuna was very controlled, super duper controlled, stood by Yudhishthira, didn't allow Bhim to waver, stood up for Draupadi. But he wasn't going to let them survive. This is important to know, because when he breaks down before the war, that's not Arjuna. This is Arjuna. The Arjuna you are seeing here in the game of dice is Arjuna. The one who is so clear in his thinking, the one who is so controlled and composed in his behavior, the one who did what needs to be done. Nakula and Sahadev. Oh, they weren't going to let this go either. They were furious. Like I said, the only person in that room that was able to forgive is Yudhishthira. And this is what makes Yudhishthira so glory, that you can forgive something like that. He doesn't forgive them. And he doesn't forgive himself. It's important to know. Yudhishthira doesn't forgive himself for what Draupadi went through. They leave. The 5 Pandavas and Draupadi leave the court. They are going back to Indraprastha, their kingdom, their palace, their wealth. It was all just a bad dream. Dushashan runs to Duryodhana. Shakuni turns to Duryodhana and says, Do you think Beam is going to let you go after what you just did? He's going to come and kill you in your sleep. Those are not the exact words. I'm using masala. Shakuni, to the effect made, the Duryodhana petrified of what Beam was going to do. And it was easy. It was easy to make the Duryodhana scared of what Beam was going to do because the whole game of dice, Beam's eyes were bloodshot red. His hands were in a fist. His jaw was tight and he was yelling threats at them the whole time. It's not hard to make you think that he's going to come and kill you in your sleep or, worse. So out of panic, they rush to Dhritarashtra. They say they're going to come and kill us. You have to let us be able to do something. What was in Yudhishthira's head? I don't know. I think by this point, Yudhishthira was worn out. I would have been, so maybe that's why I think he would have been. But actually, Yudhishthira was incredibly strong and resilient. Yudhishthira had at this point said, let faith play the hand it needs to play. So a message is delivered. Yudhishthira, come back for one last game. Would you go? No. Nobody in their right mind would go. Does that mean Yudhishthira wasn't in his right mind? I think what we need to see, instead of judging Yudhishthira as weak, is understand that it was his strength. After having endured so much, knowing you're going to have to endure more, he goes back. It's not like an alcoholic who can't help themselves and takes the next drink. It's like somebody who's exercising and you've already done 2 minutes of plank and you make yourself hold 5 seconds more. It's two very different things. Yudhishthira had endured. The pain he would have felt to lose his brothers who he loves so much, to see Draupadi go through what she went through, to not be able to protect Draupadi and to make her the one that fights for Dharma. The most beautiful quality that Yudhishthira has is he feels, but he still remains detached. This is what Vairagya is. When we talk about Vairagya, we think the person becomes unfeeling. It's not true. You feel. You feel, you feel, and you feel. But like Draupadi, Yudhishthira was able to put head over heart. You might think this is not head. Going back is not head. It's dumb. Personally, I agree with you. But as a Swamini of Chinmaya Mission, no, it's not dumb. Why? Because Yudhishthira is the hero. Yudhishthira would never waver from Dharma. If the Lord wants me to endure more, so be it. Now take this out of the context of the game of dice. Let's think of I have an illness and there's pain. I take medicine, I do physio, there's still pain. If the Lord wants me to endure more, I endure. I'm stuck in a relationship If you can leave, please leave. Well, not necessarily. Because all of us are quirky, really speaking. Endure more. Please take this in right context in relationships. But we endure too little when it comes to relationships. We forgive too little. In spiritual sadhana, endure more. Yudhishthira's strength is whatever it is that had to be done, no matter how painful it was, he endured it. But he stuck to do what was he understood to be the right thing. Why did he understand this to be the right thing? He had resigned to the fact that destiny will play out no matter what he did. Can you and I do that? We don't know what destiny is. Can Yudhishthira do that? Yeah. He had Narad Muni tell him, Vedavyasa tell him, and Yudhishthira himself could see. His mind was strong enough, and he had incredibly great saints tell him. So, endure. What will you and I do? Our very best. And then if we still don't get what we want, endure. If life gives us whatever it gives us, global pandemic and things can't be changed, endure. Why? What did Yudhishthira endure? What do we have to endure? We have to endure Zoom. Screen time. Some weather problems. Yeah, some cranky people. What did Yudhishthira have to endure? Hey, what did Draupadi have to endure? What do we have to endure? And what are we complaining about, really? Hey, we'll stop here. What happened in that last game? We'll see next week. Actually, I shouldn't have told you he came back. I should have said, let's see what he said. You all know the story anyways. Any questions? Online people, any questions? Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukha bhag bhavet, asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om